Hello, and welcome to Grade.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Corey Golston, Senior Communications Manager at Campaign Legal Center, an organization advancing democracy through law at the federal, state, and local levels, fighting for every American's rights to responsive government and the fair opportunity to participate in and affect the democratic process. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that seeks a future in which the American political process is accessible to all citizens, resulting in a representative, responsive, and accountable government. Hello, Corey. Welcome to Grade.com Talks With. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kareem.
Could you please describe Campaign Legal Center for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Of course, Campaign Legal Center, or CLC for short, is a nonpartisan organization that seeks to reform government in ways that make it more inclusive, transparent, and accountable to everyday citizens. It operates as a public interest law firm in the United States and uses its expertise in election law to advocate for voters in the courtroom, in state houses, and through public education campaigns, like communications campaigns, which I am responsible for on the team. We have been in existence since 2003, and we were founded by Trevor Potter, one of the leading lawyers for campaign finance reform, who served as general counsel for John McCain during the time when historic campaign finance reform was passed. That was when politicians on both sides acknowledged the problem of money in politics. Since then, we've expanded in our scope and have also taken on voting rights as one of our core focuses.
It's wonderful to see that your organization has been present for almost 20 years, and you're experts in the electoral rights and voting rights, and you are advocating for more transparent, as mentioned by you, accountable and inclusive government. So it's great to see that you are fighting for that purpose, and through the little research that I have done, you've been able to make significant impact, and I'm excited to learn more about those impact detail in this conversation. You mentioned that your organization is working toward transparent, accountable, and inclusive democracy. Could you please tell us what does that democracy look like?
Of course. Take gerrymandering as the first example, since all the states are going to be redrawing their political maps this year. Kareem, I'm not sure if your audience is aware, but every 10 years after the census data is unveiled, the states are tasked with redrawing the political maps. And so changes in demographics, for example, an increase in minority populations in urban areas, are reflected in the census data that is collected once every 10 years. And so the problem with gerrymandering is that politicians are in charge of drawing the maps that they themselves are running in races. So there is a very serious conflict of interest. It should be the people who decide their politicians, not the politicians deciding who the voters are. And so we view this as an inclusive issue. So to have a more inclusive democracy, we believe it must be transparent and accountable. But if politicians are redrawing the lines, they're not going to be transparent and accountable. They've proven time and time again, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, they want to protect their self-interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very unfortunate to see that the end decision on mapping is based on the decision maker, who in this case is politicians, and it's not. In many cases, it's not very inclusive. And your organization is advocating, raising the voice that it should be inclusive. The end decision on the mapping should be based on the public views rather than individual who is in the power for this particular moment. So it's important to understand and highlight this distinction, and your organization is doing so. You mentioned that you work through at the campaign financing sector an issue. Could you please tell us more in detail about this issue that you work with and the impact your organization has been able to make over a past couple of years?
Absolutely. So we believe that dark money or secret money in politics is corrupting the process because the public can't tell who is financing campaigns. So when we talk about campaign finance reform, what we're really talking about is giving the power back to the people, everyday people, so that they could have an impact in the process. So what we want is to have a system where people who can afford to write $1 million check to a politician, they can still have an impact in who gets elected. And so part of that is decreasing the flow of dark money into politics, creating public matching systems, and enacting campaign finance reform to ensure that there is disclosure and transparency in who is spending money to influence your vote.
Mhm. Yeah, if individuals, many Americans, there are not many who can, who are able to donate 1 million or more than huge amounts to political campaigns. But it's important that their voices need to be heard, even if the donation sum that they are making is significantly lower. But why? Could you please tell us why should Americans donate to campaigns and how that can make a difference?
Yeah, there are a lot of community organizations that are working on very important issues like voting rights that are really worthwhile. Many of those are organizations that Campaign Legal Center represents in our lawsuits. So they are plaintiff organizations that are coming to the court with some sort of harm that they're demonstrating that a law has caused them. Take just the last few weeks, for example, we've seen a massive increase in voter suppression laws that have passed that seek to make it harder for organizations to help voters request absentee ballots. In 2020, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a really high demand for voting absentee. So people can request in the mail that their state send them a ballot and they don't have to risk their health going in person to a polling center where there would be crowded with lots of people and they'd be waiting online and they'd be touching screens. So there was a lot of fear last year, rightfully so, that people were not going to be able to vote in person. So we support local nonprofits that help people vote. And some of those organizations, like our plaintiffs in cases like the League of Women Voters, or some maybe less popular organizations, but are very, very crucial and are new organizations like Vote America. These are organizations that we partner with in the courtroom to make sure that people have access to voting and that organizations have the ability to assist voters. So what we've seen in many states is a reaction to the high voter turnout that we saw in 2020. It set records. We believe that democracy works best when everyone is included. And so we celebrated the record turnout. However, some of the politicians in power, they saw that as a threat. So what they did this year in 2021 is they passed laws that were restricting these nonprofit charities that were nonpartisan. They just wanted to help any voter participate, request an absentee ballot. And so they are tamping down on the activities of these third-party groups, and we're trying to protect them.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate to see that what smaller nonprofit organizations, nonpartisan organizations such as yours were able to accomplish, and in the turnout in 2020 was a great representation of that. That many turned out, and the availability of absentee bullets made it more accessible for everyone to take part in the democratic process. And it's very unfortunate that those rights are being limited through some of the people who are in the power. And you mentioned that's one of the barriers that is being created by them in 2021. Besides that request of the absentee ballots, what are some other barriers that are being created or being put in place for people practice their rights?
Absolutely. So there is a nationwide attack on the freedom to vote. And we believe that no matter where you live, what zip code, what language you speak, what color your skin is, you should be able to participate in our democracy. So we file impact litigation to make sure that voters are protected. Take the example of New York State. So New York is not a swing state, so the media isn't as focused on New York. They're focused on the handful of battleground states that really decide presidential elections. But since we're nonpartisan, we are focused on all 50 states, and we try to have the most impact. So in New York, in a case we filed, we were trying to address the alarming level of ballot rejection. People don't realize that a lot of ballots are rejected due to signature issues. So what they do is they compare the signature on your voter file. Maybe you signed when you were getting your driver's license at the Department of Motor Vehicles. They compare that to the signature on the outside envelope of your absentee ballot when you send it back into the county. And so 14% of ballots were rejected in 2018, the highest in the nation. And so we sued New York because they had no process in place to cure deficiencies with your signature and give a voter an opportunity to prove that, yes, I, Kareem, have cast this ballot. Here's my social security number, my date of birth, and my new signature. Because when you're young or you have disabilities, you are more likely to have inconsistent signatures. So you are at higher risk of having your ballot rejected. So we forced New York to come up with a process to allow citizens to correct their signature issues. Due to our efforts, we were able to save 9,000 ballots because people were able to address these issues and they had them counted. So this was a major success for the Campaign Legal Center. The rejection rate fell a full 10%. It went from 14% to 4% in 2020. So we pick states that have the highest number of voters that we can help, and we try to create permanent change. And now, because of that, there will always be a process in place to make sure that you can correct these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. What might seem a simple issue, but yet it's creating a significant barrier in the case of 14% of the voters' ballots not being counted, and the fact that your organization saw this issue and were able to address it, and then the impact of it was a reduction by 10% from 14 to 4% as an indication that there needs to be the challenges need to be addressed, and those challenges that need to be requested from the governments that they improve their processes. So this, every American votes are counted despite their race, despite their political status, or despite their financial.
Sure.
It's important to indicate that. And
absolutely.
One of the you mentioned it, but one of those another issues that is being created in the process of people practicing their voting rights and the minorities being represented is redistricting. Could you please tell us about this issue and what actions your organization is taking to fight for the voices of all Americans to be heard?
Absolutely. So we believe that taking the power away from the politicians and creating citizen-led commissions is the best way to make sure that community districting actually reflects the will of the communities. So when politicians draw the lines, they try to break up communities to diffuse their voting power in favor of a slim majority. So you can see states that are almost narrowly divided 50-50, but the minority party has no power to affect change in their communities. And so what we've done is we've launched a national voting rights and fair maps campaign to raise awareness to ensure that people and their voices are heard. And so during this redistricting cycle, people can visit our website and go to planscore.org, and they can upload the maps that are being proposed in their state legislatures, and they can measure it to see if it is a gerrymander and they could fight back if they'd like to. And you can also learn more about citizens commissions if you visit our website under toolkits and resources on campaignlegal.org under Democracy U. Then you can find out more about this reform and how you can fight for it in your state.
Wonderful. The link to the Democracy U project will be provided in the description. It's great to see that you are providing a checkpoint, a toolkit for individuals to see whether their communities that they live in and whether the voices of those communities are being taken into consideration in the redistricting process. So individuals who are very passionate individuals who who care about the democracy can take actions and advocate for themselves. One of the hallmarks of the healthy democracy is public confidence in the integrity of a democratic institution, which is being done through ethics. And it's one of the issues your organization's works as well. Could you please tell us about your efforts in this resolving this issue?
Absolutely. So we believe that public service is a public trust. So in order to have effective government, the people must trust their leaders that are elected and the cabinet level appointees. We were very concerned at the beginning of the Trump administration that the president was going to be entering the administration with full ownership over the Trump organization. That gave a huge amount of opportunity for foreign leaders to effectively bribe the president by going to the Trump hotels and patronizing his properties. So we have advocated consistently for stronger ethics laws. We believe that transparency is really key. So tax returns must be published so that the public can evaluate conflicts of interest and make sure that their public servants are acting in their interest, not in self-interest. And we've been consistently asking for this, now that we're in the Biden administration. And we believe that ethics reform must be a priority for the Congress. So that's why we have, behind the scenes, been working to push the For the People Act, or H.R. 1 as it is commonly known, which is comprehensive legislation that would address not only ethics, but voting rights reforms, redistricting, and campaign finance reforms. So it's all four of the issues that CLC focuses on that would be addressed by the For the People Act, which was passed by the House of Representatives, and it's now sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. It's great to see that your efforts are being put all together and there is some change in the process of making. So hopefully the change is not far away and every American, as your mission and vision statement indicate, has access to a democratic process resulting in a representative, responsive, and accountable government. If someone would like to support Campaign Legal Center, how can they do so?
Sure. Thank you for asking. You can go to campaignlegal.org and click on the About tab and select Get Updates to join our email list for occasional updates from the communications team about our major cases, actions that can be taken, and new rollouts of campaigns that we're running. There is also a donate button on the top right corner in red. Also, please follow us on social media with the handles @CampaignLegal. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and much more. So following and engaging with us is very important.
Wonderful. The link to the Campaign Legal Center's websites and all of their social media will be provided in the description. So you viewing and listening can go to the website and familiarize yourself with all the projects Corey and the team at Campaign Legal Center is doing and support their mission. Thank you so much, Corey. It was very great to get to know your organization and very impactful and serious work that your organization is doing.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Kareem.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithms that this conversation is important, that we need to seek transparent, accountable, and inclusive government. Thank you and see you in the next episode.